The 12-year-old boy's voice echoed softly through the bustling downtown streets, his gentle melody cutting through the noise of traffic and rushing pedestrians. His little sister had been crying for 20 minutes, hungry and tired, clutching a worn stuffed rabbit as tears streamed down her dirt-smudged cheeks. Marcus didn't have food to offer her, didn't have a warm bed to promise, but he had his voice. As he knelt beside her on the cracked sidewalk, singing an old lullaby their mother used to hum, neither of them noticed the well-dressed man who had stopped mid-stride, his expensive briefcase forgotten in his hand. The man's eyes widened as he listened, something stirring deep in his chest, a recognition that went beyond the beauty of the voice to something far more profound. What happened next would transform not just their lives, but touch millions of hearts around the world. Before we carry on, please hit the subscribe button for more real, emotional, life-changing stories like this, and let me know where you are watching from in the comments. The morning sun cast long shadows across Fifth Avenue as Marcus Rodriguez sat cross-legged on the cold concrete, his back pressed against the brick wall of a towering office building. His 7-year-old sister Luna curled up beside him, her small body shivering despite the worn blanket wrapped around her shoulders. The cardboard sign propped against their makeshift camp read, "Hungry anything helps God bless," in Marcus's careful handwriting, though the words had begun to blur from the morning dew. Marcus watched the endless stream of suited professionals hurrying past, their polished shoes clicking against the pavement in rhythmic precision. Coffee cups steamed in their hands, smartphones pressed to their ears, eyes focused straight ahead as if he and Luna were invisible. He had learned not to take it personally anymore. After 3 months on the streets, he understood that most people looked through them rather than at them, their minds already occupied with boardroom meetings and quarterly reports. The empty coffee can beside them held exactly 17 cents and a few pieces of lint. Marcus counted it again, hoping somehow the numbers would change, but the reality remained unchanged. 17 cents wouldn't buy Luna the breakfast she desperately needed, wouldn't ease the hollow ache in her small stomach that had kept her whimpering through the night. "Marcus, I'm hungry," Luna whispered, her voice barely audible above the city's morning symphony. Her dark eyes, so much like their mother's, looked up at him with complete trust, as if he held all the answers to their impossible situation. The weight of that trust pressed down on his 12-year-old shoulders, like a physical burden. "I know, little star," Marcus murmured, using the pet name their mother had given Luna years ago when life was different, when they had a home and regular meals and the luxury of taking tomorrow for granted. "Just a little longer, okay? Someone will help us today. I can feel it." But as the morning stretched on, Marcus's optimism began to waver. The professional crowd thinned as office buildings swallowed the workers, leaving behind a quieter street populated by tourists and shoppers, who seemed no more inclined to notice 2 homeless children than the morning burr. Commuters had been. Luna's crying started as a soft whimper, but quickly escalated into heartbroken sobs that made Marcus's chest tighten with helplessness. She pressed her face into her stuffed rabbit, Mr. Hoppy, the only possession they had managed to save when they were evicted from their apartment. The rabbit had seen better days, his fur matted and one ear hanging by a few stubborn threads, but he remained Luna's constant companion and source of comfort. "Shh, it's okay," Marcus whispered, pulling Luna closer to his side. He could feel her ribs through the thin fabric of her dress, a painful reminder of how little they had been eating. The shelter downtown provided 1 meal a day, but the walk there took over an hour, and they often arrived to find the food already gone. Marcus closed his eyes and reached back into his memory, searching for one of the songs their mother used to sing during the difficult times. Even before they became homeless, money had been tight in the Rodriguez household. Their mother, Carmen, worked double shifts at the hospital as a cleaning lady, coming home exhausted, but always finding energy for bedtime songs and stories. The melody came to him slowly, tentatively, like a butterfly landing on an outstretched hand. Marcus began to hum softly, then gradually let the words flow in Spanish, the language of their childhood, the language of love and comfort and home. "Duérmete mi niña, duérmete mi amor, duérmete pedazo de mi corazón," he sang quietly, his young voice carrying a richness that seemed impossible from someone so small. "Sleep, my child, sleep, my love, sleep, little piece of my heart." Luna's sobs gradually subsided as the familiar melody washed over her. She had heard these words countless times in their mother's arms, before the car accident that changed everything, before the medical bills that swallowed their savings, before the eviction notice that put them on the streets. Marcus continued singing, his voice growing stronger as he saw the effect it had on his sister. He sang about guardian angels watching over sleeping children, about dreams that could transport you to magical places, about love that transcended circumstances and hardship. The words seemed to create a protective bubble around them, transforming their corner of concrete into something softer, safer. Passers-by began to slow their pace, though Marcus barely noticed. His attention was focused entirely on Luna, who had stopped crying and was now breathing more peacefully, her small fingers clutching Mr. Hoppy as her eyelids grew heavy. A well-dressed woman in her 50s paused near their corner, her hand instinctively reaching for her purse, as Marcus's voice seemed to reach directly into her heart. She dropped a $5 bill into their coffee can, lingering for a moment to listen before continuing on her way with tears in her eyes. An elderly gentleman walking his small terrier stopped completely, his weathered face softening as he heard the Spanish lullaby. He had heard similar songs in his own childhood, growing up in a Puerto Rican household in the Bronx. He contributed a $10 bill and a gentle nod of appreciation before moving along. But Marcus remained unaware of these small kindnesses, focused entirely on soothing his sister. His voice carried with it not just the melody, but the weight of responsibility, the depth of love, and the heartbreak of a childhood ended too soon. Each note seemed to hold a prayer, a wish, a desperate hope for something better. As Luna finally drifted off to sleep against his shoulder, Marcus let his voice fade to a whisper, then to silence. The street seemed quieter somehow, as if the city itself had paused to listen. He looked down at his sister's peaceful face and felt a familiar mixture of love and fear. Love for the little girl who depended on him completely, and fear that he wasn't enough, that he couldn't protect her from a world that seemed determined to crush them both. The sound of expensive leather shoes stopping directly in front of them made Marcus look up sharply. He expected to see another police officer ready to move them along, or perhaps a store owner complaining about their presence affecting business. Instead, he found himself looking up at a tall man in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit, his dark hair streaked with silver at the temples, his deep brown eyes filled with something Marcus couldn't quite identify. The man stood perfectly still for a long moment, studying Marcus with an intensity that was neither threatening nor pitying, but something else entirely. There was recognition in his gaze, though Marcus was certain they had never met before. "That was beautiful," the man said finally, his voice carrying a slight accent that Marcus couldn't place. "The song you were singing to your sister." Marcus instinctively tightened his protective hold on Luna, unsure how to respond. Adults who stopped to talk to them usually wanted something, or had lectures to deliver about finding their parents or getting to school. "She was scared," Marcus said simply, his voice still hoarse from singing. "Music helps her feel safe." The man nodded slowly, as if this made perfect sense to him. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his wallet, but instead of immediately dropping money into their can, he held it thoughtfully. "Where did you learn to sing like that?" the man asked, crouching down so he was closer to Marcus's eye level. The gesture surprised Marcus, who was used to adults towering over him, speaking down to him both literally and figuratively. "My mom," Marcus replied cautiously. "She used to sing to us all the time." "Used to?" Marcus's throat tightened. "She died in a car accident 8 months ago. We've been on our own for 3 months. The man's expression shifted, a shadow of pain crossing his features that seemed deeply personal. "I'm sorry," he said, and Marcus could tell he meant it in a way that went beyond polite sympathy. "What's your name?" the man asked gently. "Marcus Rodriguez. This is my sister Luna." "I'm David Santiago," the man replied, extending his hand formally. Marcus hesitated for a moment before shaking it, surprised by the respectful gesture. David Santiago. The name meant nothing to Marcus, but something about the way the man introduced himself suggested it should. There was a quiet confidence about him, an aura of someone accustomed to being recognized. though he seemed genuinely surprised that Marcus didn't know who he was. "Marcus, would you mind singing something else for me?" David asked, settling more comfortably into his crouch despite his expensive suit. "Not for money, not because you have to, just because I'd like to hear your voice again." There was something in the request that felt different from the casual attention of passers-by. Marcus sensed that this man was truly listening, not just hearing. He glanced down at Luna, who was still sleeping peacefully, then back at David's earnest face. "What would you like me to sing?" Marcus asked quietly. "Whatever feels right to you, whatever comes from your heart." Marcus closed his eyes and let his mind wander through the catalog of songs he knew. His mother had filled their small apartment with music from her homeland, mixing traditional Spanish lullabies with contemporary ballads, folk songs with pop hits she heard on the radio during her long work shifts. When he opened his mouth, the song that emerged was one his mother had sung during their last Christmas together, when money was already tight, but hope still lived in their household. It was a song about light conquering darkness, about finding strength in family, about believing in miracles even when they seemed impossible. Marcus's voice filled the space around them with warmth and longing, each word carrying the weight of memory and the power of dreams deferred but not destroyed. The pedestrians began to gather at a respectful distance, drawn by something they couldn't quite name but couldn't ignore. David Santiago remained perfectly still throughout the entire performance, his eyes never leaving Marcus's face. When the last note faded into the morning air, he was quiet for a long moment, seemingly lost in thought. "Marcus," he said finally, his voice thick with emotion. "I want to tell you something, and I need you to listen carefully. Can you do that for me?" Marcus nodded, uncertain what was coming, but sensing its importance. 25 years ago, I was sitting on a street corner, not very different from this one. I was about your age, maybe a little older, with my younger brother. We had been in and out of foster homes for years, never finding a place that felt like home, never finding people who wanted to keep us together." End quote. David paused, seeming to gather strength from somewhere deep inside himself. "I used to sing to my brother when he was scared, just like you sing to Luna. Music was the only thing that made sense to me in a world that seemed determined to separate us, to label us as problems to be solved, rather than children who just needed love." Marcus felt something shift in his chest, a recognition that went beyond words. "One day, a man heard me singing on that corner. He was a music producer, and he saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself. He changed my life, Marcus. He gave me opportunities I never could have imagined. Helped me turn my voice into something that could support not just myself, but eventually thousands of other people." End quote. David reached into his wallet and pulled out a business card, holding it out to Marcus. "My name is David Santiago, and I'm a musician. Maybe you've heard some of my songs on the radio, or maybe not. That doesn't matter. What matters is that I know talent when I hear it, and Marcus, you have something extraordinary." Marcus took the card with trembling fingers, struggling to process what he was hearing. The name David Santiago did sound familiar, now that he thought about it, tickling at the edges of his memory like a half-remembered dream. "I have a concert tomorrow night at Madison Square Garden," David continued. 20,000 people will be there. I want you to be there too, not in the audience, but on stage with me. I want you to sing for all of those people, Marcus. I want them to hear what I just heard." The words seemed to hang in the air like impossible gifts, too beautiful to be real. Marcus stared at the business card in his hands, reading the name over and over again, as if repetition might make it more believable. "I don't understand," Marcus whispered. "Why would you want me on your stage? I'm nobody. I'm just a homeless kid." David's expression grew fierce, protective. "You are not nobody, Marcus Rodriguez. You are a young man with a gift that could touch millions of hearts. You are a brother who loves his sister so much that you turn concrete sidewalks into concert halls just to make her feel safe. You are somebody who matters. Somebody with value that has nothing to do with where you sleep at night." End quote. Luna stirred in Marcus's arms, woken by the intensity of the conversation. She looked up at David with curious, sleepy eyes, still clutching Mr. Hoppy. "Hello, beautiful," David said gently, his voice automatically softening for the little girl. "I'm David. I was just telling your brother what an amazing singer he is." Luna looked between David and Marcus, processing the unusual situation with the adaptability of a child who had learned to accept unexpected changes. "Marcus sings to me every day," she said matter-of-factly. "He makes the scary things go away." David's eyes brightened with unshed tears. "I can tell. He has a very special voice, doesn't he?" Luna nodded seriously. "Mama said Marcus got the angel voice in our family. She said someday everyone would know how special he is." The simple, innocent words hit David like a physical blow. He had to take a moment to compose himself before speaking again. "Your mama was very wise," he told Luna softly. "And I think she was also very right." David turned his attention back to Marcus, who was still trying to process the surreal turn his morning had taken. "Marcus, I know this is overwhelming. I know it probably sounds too good to be true, but I'm going to give you my personal phone number, and I want you to call me in 2 hours. That will give you time to think about what I'm offering, to decide if you trust me enough to take this chance." He pulled out his phone and programmed his number into Marcus's cell phone, an ancient device with a cracked screen that barely held a charge. "When you call, I'll have my assistant arrange for you and Luna to be picked up, taken somewhere safe where you can shower and eat and rest. Tomorrow, if you decide you want to try this, we'll go to the venue together so you can see the stage, meet my band, get comfortable with the space." Marcus felt like he was drowning in possibilities, his mind struggling to catch up with the rapid progression of events. What if I can't do it? What if I get up there and I freeze, or my voice cracks, or I forget the words? David smiled, the expression transforming his entire face. "Then we'll figure it out together." "Marcus, the first time I performed for a large audience, I threw up twice backstage and forgot the lyrics to my opening song. But I got through it, and every performance after that got a little easier." He stood up, brushing off his suit pants with practiced ease. "I have to go to a meeting now. But Marcus, I want you to promise me something. Promise me you'll call, even if you decide you don't want to perform. Call me anyway. There are other ways I can help you and Luna, other opportunities we can explore. You don't have to do this alone anymore." Marcus looked down at the business card again, then at his sleeping sister, then back at David's earnest face. Everything in his life had taught him to be suspicious of adults making big promises, to expect disappointment, to protect himself and Luna from hope that might be crushed. But something about David Santiago felt different. Maybe it was the way he had crouched down to Marcus's level, or the genuine pain that had crossed his face when Marcus mentioned their mother's death. Maybe it was the story about his own childhood on the streets, or the way he had spoken to Luna with such gentle respect. "I'll call," Marcus said quietly, his voice barely audible above the city noise. David's smile widened. "Good. And Marcus, whatever you decide about tomorrow night, I want you to know that hearing you sing this morning reminded me why I fell in love with music in the first place. You gave me a gift today, whether you realize it or not." He reached into his wallet again and pulled out several bills, placing them gently in the coffee can. Marcus glimpsed at least 2 50s, and possibly more, but David moved quickly, as if the money was an afterthought rather than the main point of the interaction. "Take care of each other," David said, his gaze encompassing both children. "I'll be waiting for your call." As David walked away, his confident stride carrying him back into the flow of city life, Marcus sat in stunned silence, trying to process what had just happened. The business card felt surreal in his hands, like a golden ticket that might disappear if he looked away. Luna stirred against his shoulder, fully awakening now. "Who was that man, Marcus?" "I think," Marcus said slowly, "he might be someone who's going to change our lives." Marcus spent the next hour in a daze, mechanically acknowledging the few additional donations that trickled into their can, while his mind raced through the implications of David's offer. Luna, energized by her nap, and sensing her brother's excitement, chattered about the nice man who had talked to them like they were important. The money David had left was more than they usually collected in a week. Marcus carefully extracted it from the can, counting in disbelief. $200 in crisp bills, enough for food, a cheap motel room, clean clothes. Enough to buy Luna the breakfast she had been crying for. enough to give them both a hot shower and a real bed for at least one night. But the money, generous as it was, paled in comparison to the larger possibility David had presented. The idea of performing at Madison Square Garden seemed so far beyond Marcus's reality that his mind struggled to even picture it. He had seen the famous venue on television, watched award shows and concerts featuring artists who seemed to live in a completely different universe from his own. When 2 hours had passed, Marcus found himself staring at his phone, David's number glowing on the cracked screen. His finger hovered over the call button as doubt flooded through him. What if David had changed his mind? What if the whole encounter had been some kind of elaborate joke? What if Marcus called and discovered that the business card was fake, the number disconnected, the promise as empty as so many others had been? "Are you going to call the nice man?" Luna asked, seeming to sense his hesitation. Marcus looked at his sister's trusting face and felt something settle in his chest. Even if this turned out to be nothing, even if David Santiago had forgotten about them the moment he walked away, Marcus owed it to Luna to try. She deserved to see her brother fight for something better, to witness him choosing hope over fear. He pressed the call button before he could change his mind. The phone rang twice before a warm female voice answered. "David Santiago's office. This is Maria speaking." Marcus's throat felt dry as sand. Hi. My name is Marcus Rodriguez. David asked me to call this number." "Marcus." Maria's voice brightened immediately. "Yes, David told me to expect your call. He's at a meeting right now, but he left specific instructions for me. How are you and Luna doing?" The fact that Maria knew Luna's name without being told convinced Marcus that the morning's encounter had been real, that David had indeed thought about them enough to brief his assistant. "We're okay," Marcus said carefully. "David said he might be able to help us with some things." "Absolutely. David would like to arrange for a car to pick you up in about an hour. If that works for you, the driver will take you to a nice hotel where you can shower, rest, and order room service. David has already taken care of all the arrangements." End quote. Marcus felt dizzy with the reality of what was happening. "He doesn't even know us. Why would he do all this?" Maria's voice softened with understanding. "Marcus, David doesn't do anything halfway. When he decides to help someone, he commits completely. He sees something special in you, and David's instincts about talent are legendary in this business." She gave Marcus the address where the car would pick them up, and assured him that David would meet with them later that evening to discuss the concert opportunity in more detail. As Marcus hung up the phone, he felt as if he were living in someone else's life, as if he had somehow stepped through a door into a parallel universe where 12-year-old homeless boys got invited to sing at Madison Square Garden. The car that arrived to collect them was unlike anything Marcus had ever ridden in. All leather seats and tinted windows and air conditioning that worked perfectly. The driver, a kind man named Roberto, who spoke to them in both English and Spanish, treated them with the same respect he might have shown celebrity passengers. "Mr. Santiago is a good man," Roberto told Marcus as they glided through city traffic. "I've been driving for him for 8 years, and I've seen him help many people. He doesn't do it for the publicity or the tax write-offs. He does it because he remembers what it feels like to need help." The hotel was in Midtown Manhattan, a gleaming tower of glass and marble that made Marcus feel underdressed and out of place. But the staff had clearly been briefed about their arrival, greeting them warmly and escorting them to a suite on the 20th floor without any of the judgmental looks Marcus had expected. Luna's eyes went wide as they entered the suite, taking in the enormous beds with their mountain of pillows, the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, the bathroom that was larger than some of the apartments they had lived in. She ran to the window, pressing her face against the glass as she marveled at the view. "Marcus, look, we're so high up. It's like we're flying." Marcus joined her at the window, trying to process the surreal experience of seeing the city from this perspective. Just hours ago, they had been sitting on a street corner, invisible to most of the people hurrying past. Now, they were looking down at those same streets from a luxury hotel suite, guests of a man they had never heard of, but who seemed determined to change their lives. The room service menu offered more food options than Marcus had seen in months. He ordered carefully, conscious of not taking advantage of David's generosity, but desperate to give Luna a proper meal. When the food arrived, Luna's face lit up at the sight of chicken fingers and French fries, foods that had become luxury items in their restricted world. As Luna ate with the focused intensity of a child who had been truly hungry, Marcus found himself thinking about David's story, about the parallel between their situations. The idea that someone who had started where Marcus was now had become successful enough to stay in hotels like this, to perform at venues like Madison Square Garden, seemed both inspiring and impossible. After Luna had eaten her fill and settled in for a nap on one of the enormous beds, Marcus stood at the window again, watching the city bustle below. He thought about the voice that had gotten him here, the gift his mother had always insisted was special. Carmen Rodriguez had cleaned office buildings and hospital floors to support her children, but she had filled their home with music, encouraging Marcus to sing along with the radio, praising his natural ability even when money was too tight for voice lessons. "Niho," she used to say, "your voice is going to take you places I can only dream about. Never let anyone convince you it's not special." A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. Marcus opened it to find David Santiago standing in the hallway, no longer wearing the expensive suit, but dressed casually in jeans and a simple black t-shirt. He looked younger this way, more approachable, though his eyes still held that same intense focus Marcus remembered from their street corner encounter. "How are you settling in?" David asked, glancing around the suite with satisfaction. "Is the room comfortable? Did you get enough to eat?" "It's amazing," Marcus said honestly. "Thank you for all of this. I still don't understand why you're doing it, but thank you." David entered the room and settled into one of the chairs by the window, gesturing for Marcus to join him. Luna was still sleeping peacefully, curled up with Mr. Hoppy on the king-sized bed. "Marcus, I want to tell you more about why I stopped on that street corner today, why your voice affected me the way it did." David's expression grew thoughtful, distant. "When I was 14, my younger brother Diego and I were living in our fourth foster home in 2 years. The family was nice enough, but they had 3 biological children, and we always felt like outsiders, like we were being tolerated rather than welcomed." Marcus nodded, understanding the feeling of not quite belonging even when adults were trying to help. Diego was going through a rough patch, acting out in school, getting into fights. He was angry about our situation, about losing our parents, about being shuffled from home to home. The only time he seemed calm was when I sang to him, usually at night when he couldn't sleep. David paused, seeming to gather strength for the next part of his story. "One evening, I was singing to him in our shared bedroom when our foster father heard us through the door. Instead of telling us to be quiet, he listened. Later, he told his wife about my voice, and she convinced him to sign me up for the school choir. The choir director, Mrs. Patterson, was the first adult who ever told me I had real talent, that I could potentially make a career out of music. She arranged for me to audition for a youth performing arts program, which led to vocal coaching, which eventually led to a recording contract when I was 17. Marcus listened with rapt attention, seeing his own possible future reflected in David's past. But here's the thing, Marcus. None of that would have happened if I hadn't been singing to comfort my brother. The gift only meant something because it came from love, because it was born out of the desire to help someone I cared about more than myself." David leaned forward, his gaze intense. "When I heard you singing to Luna this morning, I heard that same love, that same protective instinct. Your voice is technically beautiful, yes, but what made it special was the heart behind it." "What happened to Diego?" Marcus asked quietly. David's expression clouded. He struggled with addiction as a teenager, spent years in and out of treatment. But he's been clean for 5 years now, and he works with me running a foundation that helps kids aging out of the foster system. The point is, Marcus, music saved both of us, but in different ways. For me, it became a career. For Diego, it became a bridge back to hope when he was lost in darkness. David stood up and walked to his briefcase, pulling out a folder thick with papers. "I want to show you something." He opened the folder to reveal architectural drawings, financial projections, and marketing materials. "This is a project I've been working on for 2 years. It's a music school and performance center for underprivileged kids, with full scholarships, instruments, recording studios, and performance opportunities. Marcus studied the drawings, seeing a beautiful building with practice rooms, a small concert hall, and spaces designed specifically for young people to explore their musical talents. The school will officially open next year, but we've been running pilot programs for the past 6 months. We work with kids from foster care, homeless shelters, low-income families, anyone who has talent but lacks opportunity. David pulled out another set of papers. Tomorrow night's concert isn't just a performance, Marcus. It's a fundraiser for the music school. I'm announcing the official launch, introducing some of our current students, and hopefully inspiring people to support the program. Marcus felt a piece of the puzzle click into place. You want me to perform as part of the fundraiser? I want you to be the heart of it, David corrected. Marcus, your story, your voice, your love for Luna, it represents everything this school is meant to accomplish. You embody the potential that exists in kids who just need someone to believe in them. The weight of what David was proposing settled on Marcus's shoulders. This wasn't just about one performance, one opportunity. This was about becoming a symbol, a representative of something larger than himself. What if I'm not good enough? Marcus asked, voicing his deepest fear. What if I get up there and everyone realizes I'm just a kid pretending to be something I'm not? David's smile was gentle but confident. Marcus, I've been in this business for 15 years. I've worked with some of the most talented artists in the world. I know the difference between technical skill and true gift. You have both. He pulled out his phone and showed Marcus a video. This is footage from a talent show we held last month at one of the pilot programs. I want you to see what real talent looks like when it's given the right support. The video showed a 16-year-old girl singing a song Marcus recognized, but her interpretation was so unique, so emotionally powerful, that it felt like he was hearing it for the first time. Her voice soared and dipped with perfect control, but more importantly, it told a story that made Marcus's chest tighten with recognition. That's Sophia, David explained. She aged out of foster care last year and was living in her car when one of our talent scouts found her busking in the subway. She's now enrolled in our pilot program, working toward her GED while developing her musical skills. She'll be performing tomorrow night too. Marcus watched Sophia's confident stage presence, the way she commanded attention without seeming to demand it, and felt both inspired and intimidated. The difference between where she started and where she is now is just 6 months of proper support. David continued. Vocal coaching, performance training, but most importantly, people who believe in her potential. David closed the folder and looked directly at Marcus. I'm offering you that same support, Marcus. Not just for tomorrow night, but for as long as you want it. The music school, vocal training, education support for both you and Luna, housing assistance, whatever you need to develop your gift. The offer was so comprehensive, so life-changing, that Marcus felt overwhelmed by its scope. Why me? Why us? You could help kids who are already in the system, who have some stability. Because, David said simply, sometimes the most extraordinary gifts come from the most challenging circumstances. Your voice carries something that can't be taught, something that comes from having lived through real hardship and finding beauty anyway. Luna stirred on the bed, slowly waking from her nap. She sat up, rubbing her eyes, and looking around the luxurious room as if remembering where she was. Marcus, she called softly, is the nice man still here? I'm here, sweetheart, David said gently. How was your nap? Luna climbed down from the bed and approached them, still clutching Mr. Hoppy. The bed is really soft, softer than any bed I ever slept in. David knelt down to Luna's level, the same gesture that had impressed Marcus that morning. Luna, I was just talking to your brother about something very special. Tomorrow night, I'm having a big concert with lots of people, and I've asked Marcus if he would like to sing for everyone. Luna's eyes widened with excitement. Marcus is the best singer in the whole world. Everyone should hear him sing. David chuckled at her matter-of-fact declaration. I think you're absolutely right. The question is, would you like to come to the concert too? There would be lots of lights and music, and you could watch Marcus perform on a real stage. Could I bring Mr. Hoppy? Luna asked seriously. Of course. Mr. Hoppy would be a very special guest. Marcus watched the interaction between David and his sister, noting how naturally David spoke to her, how he treated her questions with respect rather than condescension. It was another piece of evidence that David's interest in helping them was genuine. "Marcus," David said, returning to his chair, "I don't need an answer right now. I want you to think about it overnight. Tomorrow morning, regardless of your decision about performing, I'd like to take you and Luna to see the venue, meet some of the other performers, get a feel for what the evening would be like." He pulled out another business card, this one with different information. "This is the address of the music school's temporary facility. If you decide you're not ready for tomorrow night's performance, that's okay. But I'd still like you to visit the school, meet some of the other students, maybe sit in on some classes." Marcus took the card, studying the address and trying to imagine what the school might be like. "There's one more thing," David said, his tone growing more serious. "If you decide to do this, to become part of our program, there will be media attention. People will want to know your story, to understand how you went from singing on street corners to performing at major venues. That attention can be overwhelming, especially for someone your age." Marcus felt a chill of apprehension. The idea of strangers knowing about their mother's death, their homelessness, their struggles, made him uncomfortable. "We have people who can help you navigate that," David continued. "Publicists and media trainers who specialize in working with young artists. But I want you to understand that privacy becomes a luxury when you step into the public eye." "Would people know about Luna too?" Marcus asked, his protective instincts flaring. "Only what you choose to share. We can establish boundaries, control the narrative to some extent. But yes, the fact that you've been caring for your sister would likely become part of your public story." Marcus looked at Luna, who was exploring the hotel room with wide-eyed wonder, running her hands along the smooth surfaces and peering out the enormous windows. The idea of her becoming a subject of public scrutiny troubled him. "The choice is entirely yours," David said gently. "There are no wrong answers here, Marcus. Whatever you decide, Luna will be taken care of. You'll both have support, and you'll have opportunities to develop your musical abilities at your own pace." Marcus spent the rest of the evening in quiet contemplation, ordering room service dinner for Luna, while his own mind churned through the possibilities David had presented. As Luna watched cartoons on the Furna, enormous television, laughing at animated characters with a joy that had been absent from her life for months, Marcus found himself imagining different futures. He could see himself on that stage, thousands of faces looking up at him, his voice filling the massive space of Madison Square Garden. But he could also see himself freezing with terror, his voice cracking under pressure, disappointing everyone who had believed in him. The two visions warred in his mind as the evening wore on. That night, as Luna slept peacefully in the hotel bed, Marcus lay awake staring at the ceiling. The room was quiet except for the distant hum of city traffic far below, a sound that had become as familiar to him as his own heartbeat during their months on the streets. But now, cushioned by luxury and possibility, that sound felt different, less threatening, more like the background music of a life that might actually have a future. He thought about his mother, about the dreams she had harbored for his voice. Carmen Rodriguez had never lived to see her son sing for anyone beyond their small circle of family and friends, but Marcus could almost feel her presence in the room. Could imagine her reaction to David's offer. She would have been proud, yes, but also worried about the pressures and expectations that would come with such an opportunity. "Mijo," he could hear her saying, "the gift is not just about the voice. It's about the heart that guides it." When morning came, Marcus felt a strange sense of clarity. He had made his decision not through rational analysis, but through something deeper, more instinctual. He would take the chance, not because he was certain of success, but because the alternative, letting fear make the choice for him, felt like a betrayal of everything his mother had taught him about courage and hope. David arrived at the hotel promptly at 9 o'clock. Accompanied by a woman in her 30s with kind eyes and an easy smile, she introduced herself as Jennifer Martinez, David's assistant and the coordinator for the music school's student programs. "I work with all the young artists in our program," Jennifer explained as they rode in David's comfortable sedan toward the venue. "My job is to make sure you feel supported and prepared. whether that's helping with vocal warm-ups, coordinating with the technical crew, or just being someone you can talk to if you get nervous. Luna sat beside Marcus in the back seat, her face pressed to the window as they drove through Manhattan. She had never been to this part of the city, and everything seemed to fascinate her. From the massive billboards to the street vendors, to the crowds of people walking with purpose toward destinations she could only imagine. Madison Square Garden loomed before them like a concrete mountain, its circular facade both impressive and intimidating. Marcus had seen it in photographs and on television, but standing before it in person made the magnitude of what he was about to attempt feel suddenly, overwhelmingly real. "Nervous?" David asked, noticing Marcus's apprehension. "Terrified," Marcus admitted honestly. David laughed, a warm sound that somehow made Marcus feel less alone in his fear. "Good. That means you understand how important this is. The day I stop feeling nervous before a performance is the day I'll know I've lost my edge." The interior of the venue was a maze of corridors and equipment, technicians and musicians preparing for the evening's show. David led them through the organized chaos with the confidence of someone who belonged in this world, greeting crew members by name and checking on various aspects of the production. The stage itself was larger than Marcus had imagined. A vast expanse of polished wood, surrounded by towering speakers and elaborate lighting rigs. 20,000 empty seats stretched away from the stage in concentric circles, creating an amphitheater that seemed to extend infinitely into the darkness. "This is where you'll be standing," David said, leading Marcus to a spot center stage marked with tape. "When the lights come up and you see all those faces, remember that every single person in those seats is hoping to be moved by what you do up here. They want to feel something, to be transported, to connect with something larger than themselves." Marcus stood in the designated spot and looked out at the empty seats, trying to imagine them filled with people. The scale was daunting, but there was something else too. Something exciting about the possibility of sharing his voice with so many people at once. "The acoustics in here are incredible," Jennifer added, joining them on stage. "Your voice will carry to every corner of the building without strain. The sound engineers have already done preliminary work based on David's description of your vocal range and style." "You've thought of everything," Marcus said, impressed despite his nervousness. "We've had practice," David replied. "This isn't our first time working with a young artist who's never performed for a large audience. The key is preparation and support." They spent the next hour familiarizing Marcus with the stage layout, the microphone system, and the basic choreography of the evening's program. Marcus would perform 2 songs, both pieces he had chosen from his repertoire of Spanish lullabies and contemporary ballads. The first would be a solo performance, just Marcus and his voice accompanied by a simple piano arrangement. The second would feature David joining him for a duet, a Spanish-language version of one of David's hit songs that they had worked on together the previous evening. "The beauty of your voice," David explained as they rehearsed, "is that it doesn't need embellishment. No elaborate staging, no flashy costumes, no gimmicks. Just you, the microphone, and the psalm." Luda watched the rehearsal from the front row, her stuffed rabbit in her lap, clapping enthusiastically after each run-through. Her presence was both comforting and motivating for Marcus, reminding him of why he had started singing in the first place. As the afternoon progressed, other performers began arriving for their own sound checks and rehearsals. Marcus met Sophia, the 16-year-old former foster child whose video David had shown him, and was struck by her confidence and warmth. She treated Marcus like a peer rather than a newcomer, offering practical advice about managing stage nerves and connecting with the audience. "The first time I performed for more than 10 people, I was convinced I was going to forget every word," Sophia confided during a break. "But David taught me something that changed everything. He said to pick one person in the audience, someone whose face you can see clearly, and sing to them. Make it personal. Make it a conversation between you and that one person. Everyone else disappears." "Does it work?" Marcus asked. "It did for me. Now I look for someone who seems like they really need to hear what I'm singing, and I give them everything I have." As evening approached, the venue began to fill with audience members. Marcus watched from a backstage monitor as people streamed through the entrances, their excited chatter, creating a buzz of anticipation that was both thrilling and nerve-wracking. The other performers were seasoned professionals who moved through their pre-show routines with practiced ease. Marcus felt increasingly out of place among them. A 12-year-old boy who had learned to sing not in conservatories or recording studios, but on street corners and in homeless shelters. "You belong here," David said quietly, appearing beside Marcus as he watched the monitor. "I know it doesn't feel that way yet, but you belong here as much as anyone else on this stage tonight." The show began with a multimedia presentation about the music school, featuring video testimonials from students and staff, statistics about youth homelessness and the lack of arts education funding, and a call to action for the audience to support the program through donations and volunteerism. Marcus watched from the wings as David took the stage to thunderous applause, his presence commanding the attention of 20,000 people with effortless charisma. David's opening song was one Marcus recognized from the radio, a powerful ballad about overcoming adversity and finding strength in community. As the evening progressed, various performers took the stage, each contributing their own style and story to the program's overarching narrative about the transformative power of music. Sophia's performance was particularly moving, her voice soaring through a contemporary piece that had the entire audience on their feet. "You're next," Jennifer whispered, appearing at Marcus's side as the previous performer left the stage. "Remember, you've got this. Just sing like you were singing to Luna on that street corner." Marcus felt his heart hammering as he walked onto the stage, the lights momentarily blinding him as he approached the microphone. The audience was a sea of faces, some clearly visible in the front rows, others lost in the darkness beyond the stage lights. He thought about Sophia's advice and scanned the front section until his eyes found a young woman, perhaps in her 20s, whose expression was attentive and kind. She was sitting with what appeared to be her parents, and something about her face reminded Marcus of Luna's trusting gaze. "Good evening," Marcus said into the microphone, his voice carrying clearly through the venue's sound system. "My name is Marcus Rodriguez, and I want to tell you about my sister Luna." The audience quieted, sensing something different about this young performer. 6 months ago, Luna and I were living on the streets. We had lost our mother. We had no family to take us in, and we were scared most of the time. But Luna had me, and I had my voice, and somehow that was enough to get us through the darkest nights. Marcus felt his initial nervousness beginning to fade as he connected with the audience, sharing his story with an honesty that seemed to create an intimate space despite the venue's enormous size. "The song I'm going to sing for you tonight is one my mother used to sing to us when we were scared or sad or just needed to feel loved. It's about finding light in darkness, about believing in tomorrow even when today feels impossible." He began to sing, his voice rising clear and pure into the vast space of the arena. The Spanish lyrics flowed with the same natural ease he had demonstrated on the street corner, but now amplified and supported by the venue's perfect acoustics. Every word carried weight. Every note told a story of loss and hope, fear and courage. The audience was completely silent, 20,000 people holding their collective breath as Marcus's voice filled the space with something that transcended entertainment and became something closer to prayer. He sang about guardian angels watching over sleeping children, about dreams that could transport you beyond your circumstances, about love that persisted even when everything else was stripped away. As the song built to its climax, Marcus felt something shift inside him. The nervousness was gone, replaced by a sense of purpose and connection that he had never experienced before. He was no longer singing for the audience but with them, creating a shared moment of vulnerability and hope that seemed to bind 20,000 strangers together. When the last note faded into silence, the pause seemed to stretch for an eternity before the audience erupted into applause that was unlike anything Marcus had ever heard. It wasn't just clapping, it was a roar of appreciation and emotion that seemed to shake the very foundations of the building. Marcus looked out at the sea of faces, many of them streaked with tears, and felt a profound sense of gratitude. These people had listened not just to his voice, but to his story, had opened their hearts to a 12-year-old boy they had never met, but who had somehow touched something deep within them. David appeared beside him on stage, putting a protective arm around Marcus's shoulders as the applause continued. "Ladies and gentlemen," David said into his microphone, "Marcus Rodriguez, everyone." The applause intensified, and Marcus saw people in the audience rising to their feet, their ovation becoming a standing tribute that seemed to go on forever. He thought about Luna, watching from the wings with Jennifer, and wished his mother could have been there to see this moment. As the applause finally began to subside, David addressed the audience directly. "3 days ago, I was walking down Fifth Avenue when I heard something that stopped me in my tracks. I heard a voice so pure, so filled with love and hope, that it reminded me why I fell in love with music in the first place." David gestured toward Marcus, who was still overwhelmed by the audience's response. Marcus was singing on a street corner, not for fame or fortune, but to comfort his little sister, who was scared and hungry. He was singing because sometimes music is all we have to offer the people we love. The audience listened with rapt attention as David continued. "The music school we're launching isn't just about teaching scales and vocal technique. It's about finding young people like Marcus, kids who have gifts that could change the world if they just had someone to believe in them." David paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. "Marcus, would you like to tell everyone about your sister Luna?" Marcus stepped closer to the microphone, his voice steadier now. "Luna is 7 years old, and she's the bravest person I know. She never complains about being hungry or tired or scared. She just trusts me to take care of her, and that trust has made me stronger than I ever thought I could be." He looked toward the wings where Luna was watching with wide eyes. "Luna taught me that love isn't just a feeling, it's an action. It's singing when your voice is the only comfort you can offer. It's believing in tomorrow even when today feels impossible." The audience was completely silent again, hanging on every word. "The song I'm going to sing now is for Luna, but it's also for everyone who has ever felt lost or forgotten. It's about finding your way home, even when home isn't a place but a feeling. Marcus began his second psalm, a contemporary ballad that he had arranged with Spanish lyrics. His voice seemed to have gained strength and confidence from the audience's response to his first performance, and he sang with a maturity that belied his 12 years. Halfway through the song, David joined him, their voices blending in harmony that was both technically perfect and emotionally resonant. The duet became a conversation. Two voices from different generations sharing the same story of struggle and hope, loss and redemption. As the song reached its conclusion, both performers stood side by side, their voices united in a final chorus that seemed to lift the entire audience with its message of resilience and possibility. When the last note faded, the standing ovation was immediate and thunderous, a testament to the power of authentic emotion shared between performer and audience. Marcus felt tears on his cheeks as he looked out at the sea of faces, all of them on their feet, all of them celebrating not just his performance but the story he represented. He had started the evening as a homeless boy with a dream, and he was ending it as an artist who had moved 20,000 people to tears and hope. David took the microphone one final time. "Ladies and gentlemen, what you've witnessed tonight is exactly why the Santiago Music Foundation exists. Marcus Rodriguez is not just a talented young man. He's a symbol of the potential that exists in every child who just needs someone to believe in them." End quote. The audience erupted again, their applause mixing with shouts of encouragement and support. Marcus saw people wiping tears from their eyes, saw others pulling out their phones to make donations to the music school, saw the tangible impact of his story on thousands of lives. As they left the stage together, Marcus felt David's hand on his shoulder, a gesture of support and pride that meant more than any applause. "You did something extraordinary tonight," David said quietly. "You didn't just perform, you transformed a room full of strangers into a community united by hope." Backstage, Luna ran to Marcus with tears streaming down her face, throwing her arms around his waist in a hug that nearly knocked him over. "Marcus, you were so beautiful. Everyone was crying because your voice made them feel things." Jennifer appeared with her tablet, showing Marcus the real-time donation numbers that were climbing rapidly as the evening progressed. "We've already raised more than our entire goal for the year," she said with amazement. People are donating not just money, but offering to volunteer, to mentor students, to provide instruments and equipment. But the most significant moment came when David pulled Marcus aside, away from the backstage celebration. "Marcus, I want you to know that what happened tonight was just the beginning. You've shown everyone what's possible when talent meets opportunity, when love meets courage." David handed Marcus a folder containing documents that would change his life forever. "These are enrollment papers for the music school, but they're also guardianship papers. If you're willing, I'd like to become your and Luna's legal guardian, to make sure you both have the stability and support you need to thrive." Marcus stared at the papers, trying to process the magnitude of what David was offering. Legal guardianship meant safety, security, a permanent home for him and Luna. It meant David was committed to their welfare not just as a charitable gesture, but as a family responsibility. "You would do that for us?" Marcus asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Marcus, I don't have children of my own. I've spent my adult life trying to help young people through music. But I've never had the chance to make that kind of long-term commitment to specific individuals. You and Luna have already changed my life more than you know." David's expression grew serious. "This isn't a decision to make lightly or quickly. There would be legal processes, social worker evaluations, transitional periods. But if you're willing, I'm ready to make that commitment." Marcus looked across the backstage area, where Luna was showing Mr. Hoppy to some of the other performers, her face radiant with joy and excitement. 6 months ago, they had been alone in the world, facing an uncertain future, with nothing but each other and Marcus's voice. Now they were being offered not just opportunity, but family, not just support, but belonging. The weeks that followed Marcus's performance became a whirlwind of activity that sometimes left him feeling dizzy with the pace of change. The video of his Madison Square Garden performance went viral within hours of being posted online, accumulating millions of views and generating media attention that extended far beyond the music industry. News outlets wanted to interview Marcus and Luna, record labels began making inquiries about representation, and the Santiago Music Foundation received more applications and donations than they could process. Marcus found himself at the center of a story that had captured the public imagination, a real-life tale of talent discovered and dreams realized that seemed to offer hope in a world often dominated by cynicism and despair. But David was careful to shield Marcus and Luna from the more overwhelming aspects of sudden fame. He hired a team of professionals to manage media requests, ensuring that any interviews or appearances were age-appropriate and aligned with Marcus's comfort level. He also arranged for counseling support to help both children process the rapid changes in their lives. The legal guardianship process moved forward steadily, with social workers conducting home visits and background checks, interviewing Marcus and Luna about their wishes, and evaluating David's ability to provide long-term care. The paperwork was complex and sometimes intimidating, but David's legal team guided them through each step with patience and expertise. During this transitional period, Marcus and Luna lived in a guest apartment in David's Manhattan penthouse, a space that had been converted into a comfortable home for them, complete with bedrooms, a study area, and a small recording studio where Marcus could practice without disturbing the rest of the building. The recording studio became Marcus's sanctuary, a place where he could explore his voice without the pressure of public performance or media attention. David worked with him daily, helping him develop his technique while being careful not to overtrain or damage his natural gift. "The most important thing," David explained during one of their sessions, "is to let your voice mature naturally. You have something special, but you're still growing, still developing. We want to support that growth, not force it." Luna thrived in their new environment, enrolled in a private school that provided both academic instruction and arts education. She made friends quickly, her natural warmth and resilience making her popular with classmates and teachers alike. The trauma of their homeless months began to fade as she gained weight, slept regularly, and experienced the security of knowing that tomorrow would bring food, shelter, and safety. Marcus also began attending school, though his education was supplemented with private tutoring to help him catch up on the learning he had missed during their months on the streets. He discovered that he had a natural aptitude for languages and literature, talents that complemented his musical abilities. But the most significant change was in Marcus's relationship with his own voice. No longer was singing just a tool for survival or comfort, it was becoming a means of communication, expression, and connection that extended far beyond his immediate circumstances. The Santiago Music Foundation officially opened its doors 6 months after Marcus's debut performance, housed in a renovated warehouse in Brooklyn that had been transformed into a state-of-the-art facility. The building contained practice rooms, recording studios, a small concert hall, and classroom spaces designed specifically for young musicians. Marcus was among the first official students, but he was also something more, a symbol of the program's mission and a testament to its potential impact. His story had become part of the foundation's fundraising efforts, helping to secure ongoing support from donors and corporate sponsors. The school's philosophy was built around the idea that musical talent could be found in unexpected places, that with proper support and encouragement, young people from challenging backgrounds could develop their gifts into powerful tools for personal and social transformation. Marcus worked with vocal coaches, music theory instructors, and performance specialists, but he also participated in community service projects, mentoring younger students, and using his growing platform to advocate for homeless youth and arts education. 1 year after his debut performance, Marcus returned to Madison Square Garden, this time as the featured performer at the Santiago Music Foundation's annual gala. The event had grown from a fundraiser to a celebration, featuring performances by foundation alumni, celebrity guests, and a special presentation about the program's impact on its students and the broader HR community. But for Marcus, the most meaningful moment came not during his performance, but in the hours before the show, when he and Luna visited the street corner where David had first heard him sing. They brought flowers to place on the sidewalk, a memorial to the mother they had lost and the journey that had brought them to this moment. "Do you think Mama would be proud of us?" Luna asked, her voice thoughtful as she arranged the flowers carefully. Marcus looked at his sister, now 8 years old, and confident in a way that had been impossible during their months of uncertainty. "I think she would be amazed," he said honestly. "Not just by the music or the success, but by how strong and kind and brave you've become." They stood together on the corridor for a few minutes, remembering the scared, hungry children they had been, and marveling at the path that had led them to security, opportunity, and hope. That evening, Marcus took the stage at Madison Square Garden once again, but this time he was not the frightened boy seeking to comfort his sister. He was a young artist with a message, a voice that had been refined through training but had never lost its essential authenticity. His performance that night was a tribute to all the children who were still sleeping on streets, still searching for safety and belonging, still waiting for someone to recognize their potential and offer them a chance. He sang about the journey from despair to hope, from isolation to community, from survival to thriving. But the most powerful moment came when he invited Luna to join him on stage, not as a prop or a symbol, but as a person in her own right, someone whose strength and resilience had helped make his success possible. "My sister Luna taught me that courage isn't the absence of fear," Marcus told the audience, his arm around Luna's shoulders as she stood beside him at the microphone. "Courage is doing what you have to do to protect the people you love, even when you're scared." Luna, now confident and articulate, spoke into the microphone with the same directness that had always characterized her approach to the world. "Marcus saved me with his voice, but all of you saved us by listening. Thank you for hearing our story and for helping other kids who need someone to believe in them." The audience's response was immediate and overwhelming, but Marcus and Luna no longer felt overwhelmed by the attention. They had learned to channel that energy into purpose, to use their platform to amplify the voices of young people who were still searching for their own opportunities. As they left the stage together, Marcus reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. From a street corner to Madison Square Garden, from homelessness to family, from survival to success, their story had become proof that with the right support and encouragement, any child could overcome the circumstances of their birth and create a future limited only by their dreams and determination. The Santiago Music Foundation had grown to serve over 500 students annually, with satellite programs in 12 cities and a waiting list that stretched for months. Marcus had become not just a graduate of the program, but one of its most effective advocates, using his voice both literally and figuratively to ensure that other young people would have access to the same opportunities. That had transformed his life. But perhaps the most significant transformation was in Marcus himself. The scared, desperate boy who had sung on street corners to comfort his sister had evolved into a confident young man who understood that his greatest gift was not just his voice, but his ability to use that voice, create connection, inspire hope, and remind people that every child deserved the chance to discover and develop their unique talents. On quiet evenings in the apartment he shared with Luna and David, Marcus would sometimes sit at the piano and play the simple melodies that had sustained them through their darkest moments. The songs were the same, but their meaning had deepened, their purpose had expanded, and their power to heal and transform had been proven beyond any doubt. Luna, now thriving in school and exploring her own interests in art and writing, would sometimes join him for these informal sessions, her clear voice blending with his in harmonies that spoke of family, security, and the enduring power of love to overcome any obstacle. David, who had become not just their guardian but their father in every meaningful sense, would listen from the kitchen or the study, marveling at how two children who had once been invisible to the world had become voices for hope and possibility that were now heard by millions. The boy who had summed to calm his sister's fears had become a man whose voice calmed the fears of countless others, reminding them that, no matter how dark the night, dawn would always come for those who had the courage to keep singing until the light returned. Marcus Rodriguez's story had become a testament to the transformative power of music, the importance of believing in young people, and the profound impact that can result when talent meets opportunity, when love meets courage, and when one person's willingness to listen can change not just individual lives, but the entire trajectory of hope for a generation. As Marcus looked toward the future, he knew that his journey was far from over. There would be new challenges, new opportunities, new ways to use his voice to make a difference in the world. But he also knew that no matter where that journey led him, he would never forget the street corner where it all began, the little girl who had trusted him to keep her safe, and the man who had stopped to listen when no one else seemed to hear. The homeless boy who had sung to his sister had become a beacon of hope for children everywhere. Proof that with the right support and encouragement, any dream was possible, any voice could be heard, and any child could rise above their circumstances to create a future filled with music, love, and limitless possibility. In the end, Marcus's story was not just about a voice discovered or a talent developed, but about the fundamental human need for connection, belonging, and the chance to contribute something meaningful to the world. It was a reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary gifts come from the most ordinary moments, and that the act of listening, truly listening, can be the first step toward changing not just individual lives, but the entire world. The boy who had sung on street corners had found his stage, but more importantly, he had found his purpose, his family, and his voice in the truest sense of the word. And in doing so, he had reminded everyone who heard his story that music has the power to heal, to unite, and to transform not just the singer, but everyone who takes the time to truly listen.